Right, welcome everybody. We are so excited. This is AvTech's second webinar. We had our first webinar that we hosted for brokers last quarter, and we had talked about credit and leasing, and it was really great. We got a lot of positive feedback, so we wanted to host a webinar this quarter with more of a sales marketing approach in regards to brand and why your brand matters more than your best rate. And we are very lucky. Today we have Chris Sharman. He was actually a little sick, so I'm glad he was able to step in last minute. Chris is our CEO. He was Avtech's general counsel for several years, and then in 2020, he came on to be our CEO, and he's made tons of new changes, flipping us upside down, and he's done a lot for Avtech, and we are very lucky to have him. I'm Autumn. I'm our brand and marketing manager. I started at Avtech in 2020, and I was on our funding team for a while. And Chris asked me to come to our marketing team, and I've loved it ever since. I've learned so much, and we're excited to share a little bit about what we've learned and what's worked really well for Avtech. And hopefully, you guys can take away pieces of that and apply it to your businesses and your brands. And we'll just get started with Chris talking about reputation.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. It's lovely to meet with you all. We're just going to share some things that have been important to us. And I'm certain that many of you already know these things, but it's good to share them so we all have common knowledge. So for us, our brand, it's very important to us and how we present ourselves to the world. And the one thing I will say about reputation is as we all know, it precedes you. And the challenge, I think, for people in finance is we're always trying to close the current deal, move on to the next deal, and we focus on that. And it's understandable why we do that. That's where your revenue comes from. But what happens is if you fail to take into account how your brand represents you, you can sometimes do things that are inconsistent with that brand. And I think that for groups like us, as well as brokers who are in many cases individually working with clients, if they know that they could fully trust you and that you take your personal brand very seriously and that matters, it answers a whole lot of questions for clients. And it helps you to have not only success in the near term, but success over a long period of time. And for this one, so I like to think about brand as what is the thing that most authentically represents you, and what do you aspire to be? So for me, and at Avtech, we spend a lot of time thinking about, talking about, analyzing, researching what our brand is, what it should be, and what do we want it to be. And at the core of all of those questions is it has to authentically represent you. And when you do it well, your brand speaks for you and answers a lot of questions for our potential customers, because if they know your brand and they know you're reliable and trustworthy, it allows deals to go much smoother because they can trust that you're asking for information that they need, that you legitimately need, and you're not just trying to make a deal, complicated for its own sake. And for brokers, particularly those of you who are working with, like individually with your clients, if your clients understand that they can trust you, that the way you present yourself, the way you represent yourself is authentic to you, you're going to have a lot more success over a long period of time than just trying to focus on closing the current deal. And another thing around brand is, like I mentioned earlier, there's an aspirational component to it. And what do you want to be? And as soon as you are able to identify what that is, you can start working on developing it, and eventually it becomes reality. But even though there is an aspirational component to it, it still has to be authentic to you. You can't present yourself as being something that you're not, because people will see right through that very quickly. And that turns people off. It lowers your credibility, because it feels like you're trying to be something that you're not. And Autumn will speak to that more later on in this webinar about unapologetic brands. But for me, doing the work on the front end to identify your brand is really key to being successful. And these two categories, persistence and consistency, this is where you can prove that your brand is authentic to you. And if you behave in such a way consistently over a long period of time, then it's clear that that is authentically you. And when you do that, people know what to expect when they work with you. They, like, for example, we take a lot of pride here at being able to structure really complicated transactions. Very complicated in a way that customers often can't get the financing they need from traditional lenders because of some aspect of the project. And we tend to be quite good at that. And so when people work with us, they know that that's what they're going to get. They know that we're going to figure out a way to get this transaction done as best we can. And we're very upfront about it. And part of having a clear brand is they know that when they come to us, we're a group they can go to that's going to try very, very hard to structure that transaction. And this persistence and consistency also apply to developing long-term relationships. We like to have partnerships that last for a very long time. We want to start working with someone and still be working with them 5, 10 years from now. And when you operate consistent with your brand, it just makes that much more likely to happen. And it allows you to be way more successful because as you go about doing your work, you're not trying to appeal to everyone. You're trying to appeal to your unique customer, the ones that just naturally want to work with you. And in our world, financing is sometimes viewed as a commodity, but when you're talking about financing really large projects, that it's not like mortgages where you have the same kind of asset, pretty broadly based market rates. When you're dealing with the kind of work that we all do, um, it's really important that people understand that you're able to live up to your brand's reputation and that it's a really good reputation.
I love that. Thanks, Chris.
Mhm.
I think that ties into the 2 points that I wanted to talk about, which is the power of storytelling and identity and what you stand for. And I thought about these things because I wanted brokers and other partners to be able to take away some tools or some formulas that maybe they could use to then apply into their personal brand or their business. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is storytelling. We, in the past year, Chris has really encouraged storytelling in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways that we have started doing this is through our marketing team, coordinating with a handful of our customers. And we're so lucky that our customers let us go and meet them and share their name, and the projects that they finance through us. And our marketing team, in essence, would coordinate with the founder, for example. I'm going to use Planet Hollywood. We just recently went there and got to help them prepare for their grand opening in Times Square. And we got to meet with that founder and interview him about where he comes from and how he started and his plans for the business and the struggles that they encountered when coordinating with vendors and timelines and these very normal, hurdles that happen when you're financing equipment. And I think our marketing team, my team is so much better at this than I am, but they were able to tell a really great story about not only the impact that they've had on us and we've had on them, but just overall being able to paint this picture and create that emotional connection. It's real world impact. And I think being able to share that with other customers in the future was our main goal in showing them not only can we work in just about every industry, but this is the impact that we can help provide. We want to work with businesses that want to grow too, and we were on board with that. And I think that doing this through storytelling and focusing on those emotions and not just focusing on the statistics is so much more impactful. And I think that, as Chris mentioned, what we do in equipment finance is complicated, right? There's rates and there's terms and there's credit to think about and there's so many factors. And I think simplifying it into something so much more engaging is going to be so much more rememberable as well. We've had a lot of new customers coming to us after watching our videos and wanting to work with us. And I think that's really exciting and really inspiring just to see, we've been able to help a lot of businesses and it's just the beginning. So I do want to mention that you don't need, a camera crew or an entire marketing team to put, all these resources into something like this. I think that storytelling is something that anybody can do, especially I think in sales and brokerages. I think that this is a tool that is very, very important, and leaning into those strengths and weaknesses that Chris mentioned a few slides back, because everyone tells a story so differently, and your perspective shapes the story. So even if you're, two brokers at the same company, you're going to tell a story completely different, and that is a tool that's to your advantage. And so again, this is something that's just worked really well for us that we wanted to share. And the last thing, I know we only have a couple more minutes, but I wanted to talk about is more on the side of brand identity and having an unapologetic voice. I read somewhere that I think it was 80 or 82% of consumers prefer brands that stand for something, even if they don't personally agree with. And I think that's because trying to appeal to everyone will just weaken your brand and your brand differentiation. I think that for AvTech, we know we're not for everyone, and that's okay, but we are going to be the right fit for the right partners. And so I wanted to use this really simple format. This is just breaking your identity down basically into four key points: what you sell, why you sell it, who you are, and how you deliver. And I'm going to use AvTech as an example in this. But starting with what you sell, so here you want a really clear, unwavering value proposition, right? So for AvTech, we use that we have the idea that we back businesses that build the future. That's the kind of businesses that we support and that we want to get on board with. And I think just being specific and bold about what you offer, you don't need to water it down to appeal to everyone. Um, and the other section is why you sell it. And that's just comes from a strong belief, which will drive decisions. And for AvTech, that is that we are committed to contributing to something bigger, bigger than ourselves and bigger than what we've accomplished in the past. And standing for something meaningful like that, customers align that with, you know, purpose. And we want to be a purpose-driven brand. We don't want to just be associated with the services that we provide, because we do offer so much more than that. And then who you are, this is very, very easy to overcomplicate because, you know, you can be a million things. You can be a private capital firm and you can offer equipment financing, and there's a million ways to say that. But I think simplifying it down to just a brand that really attracts the right audience, and then in return, you will repel the wrong ones, the ones that you're not a fit for. So with AvTech, we are an independent partner and a trusted partner, and it really is that simple. We are independently operated, and that's been a very beneficial thing for us. And we know that we are trusted. We're not trying to change the world, but we do claim to be those two things. Again, you can't be everything to everyone. And I think owning your positioning and leaning into that, and then ending with how you deliver, which is some sort of commitment that you're offering. And with AvTech, what we offer is rapid, flexible, adaptable terms. That's something that we have really focused on. It's a reason of our success is because we've been able to be so flexible. And we I think the key takeaway with that is you want your actions and processes to reinforce your brand stance and making your promise more than just words. You really need to live that. And again, I know it's easy to overcomplicate what is your brand and what does your business offer, but I think separating it into these four key parts is very essential, and it will also help while you sell, just simplifying it that way. Because I think that being unapologetic in who you are and what you're offering, you're not chasing every transaction. It just attracts the right ones. And so I know we don't have a ton of time for questions, but I just wanted to leave you with that. I think going back to what Chris said and leaning into your strengths and knowing what your weaknesses are and being authentic, but also being able to tell stories and being able to connect with your audience outside of your own brand. Um, and again, we've just had so much success and we love our broker partners. So we just wanted to share a little bit about what's worked for us. And Chris, I don't know if you had any last thoughts before we
Yeah,
wrap up here.
I have just one. So I think that when you start a business, and particularly say for brokers, a lot of times brokers just go out on their own. They just hang up their shingles, so to speak, and they're just working as hard as they can to develop relationships and bring in transactions. And we understand how hard that is. It also leaves little time to think about your brand. So you have to be very intentional and carve out time to really think through, hey, what do I represent? What do I want to represent? And even though you might be just absolutely swamped and, engaging in work to try to develop deals in your business, this brand component is not a luxury. It's core to being successful for the long term. We tend to think about our business as having a very long investment horizon. We want to be doing this in 50 years. And I think for those of you who are brokers, in, either on your own or in small brokerage firms, take the time to think about what your brand is and what you represent, and it will go a very long way in developing your business. And it's no longer just, you know, I'm trying to string together a bunch of deals. You'll start to develop a reputation out there as someone who's reliable, people want to work with. We have broker partners that we've been working with for 20 plus years. So the brand helps you have that kind of sustainability.
I love that. And I think just to add on that and to wrap up, when we think of AvTech and when we want others to think of AvTech, more than us just being a private capital firm, when people think of AvTech, we want them to think of that's the company that tells the stories. That's the company that grows businesses. That's the company that's been, helping all of these different businesses, these founders grow their business and fulfill those dreams. And so I think adding on to what Chris said, really focusing on what it is that you want to be remembered for beyond financing, right? Financing is such a broad term. And I think, you know, giving it more meaning as we've done has been really beneficial to us. Again, I know we don't have a ton of time for questions, but if you're interested in looking at any of those or watching any of those customer stories, you can find them on our website, our customer stories, or on our YouTube or social media. We love sharing them and we love feedback. So if there's any questions that come through the chat, I'm happy to direct them to Chris and whatnot. But we do want to thank everybody for joining. We will post this recording on our website under our broker learning library, and we'll have other, individuals on in quarters to come. But we just love sharing and learning from our broker community. So thank you so much, everybody. And thanks,
Thank you.
Chris, for
Thank you.
jumping on last minute.
Thank you all.
All right. Thanks.
That's good.